Back to the Future came out, and that guitar scene with Michael J. Fox where he just rips up Johnny B. Good, that's honestly what made me want to start playing guitar. So as kind of cheesy as that is, that's really the reason, because he was just like jumping around and wailing and kicking over amps, and I was like, yep, I definitely want to be doing that. I've been playing guitar for 25 years. My first experiences with a guitar, you know, I would go every Friday into a local music store and take a lesson. And, you know, it was always just like a religious experience walking into this guitar store with all these guitars. And, you know, there were great players there. And it was always just so inspiring and motivating that I couldn't, you know, it was just like I couldn't wait till the following Friday to keep going back. So it was, I think it's important to be in that kind of motivational and inspirational situation. You know, whether it's a guitar store or a private teacher in his house, or even just, you know, not even leaving your own home and doing webcam lessons, but having that, you know, looking forward to that experience of learning and growing and getting the almost instant gratification of learning something new and trying to play it, and, you know, accepting and understanding that it's a work in progress and a challenge, and always doing it. I kind of grabbed onto all that stuff really early, and it just made me hungry to keep going, and I don't think it'll ever stop. I did have lessons from when I was 10 years old to when I was 14 years old, and then I started getting into, you know, the hows and whys of what I was doing. You know, like most players, I started off just, my teacher was guiding me towards learning songs, which is great. You know, you got to have perspective. You got to learn, you know, what other people are doing, and get a, you know, get a background of how to use these tools, right? And then started with some basic general theory, but it wasn't answering the questions that I had. I didn't really feel like I was moving forward after 4 years. So I just started to teach myself any books, videos that I could get. This was pre-internet, real internet, so I'm kind of dating myself, but I did try and just scour anything that I could find, and jam with a lot of people, which is always important to learn from your peers. And then after high school, I went to college. After college, I went out to Musicians Institute, Guitar Institute of Technology, and I was there for a year, and just tried to get into all the electives of all the things that I didn't do before. You know, I grew up mainly a rock player, rock and blues, so I dived into country and jazz and funk and fusion and anything that I possibly could, because again, I had this hunger to just keep everything progressing and expanding. So the best way to do it was to start learning new genres and pull from these genres and then kind of fuse it all together in my own form of guitar playing. So a bit of self-taught, a bit of definitely schooled, and I think it's a good balance. Almost everything that I'm saying in my video series here on JamPlay.com is what I wish I would have been taught really, really early on. You know, it's a lot of obvious, simple stuff like, hey, be rhythmic, you know, rather than a flurry of shredding notes, you know, because it's just about what speaks, what really hits home to the listener, and you know, the musicality side of things is just the most important stuff that you can grab onto. And, you know, improv, I really wish I was pushed towards the improv thing. I was a late bloomer when it came to improv, but I wish somebody would have really just said, okay, here's 2 notes, now make something musical happen with it. You know, I wanted, I now understand the importance of such a simple challenge, but a challenge nonetheless to be musical. Use the tools that we're learning, but don't just, you know, okay, I learned this scale, now let me move on to the next one and the next one. You know, stop and now let's do something musical with it before you move on. Before you add something onto your, you know, your tool belt there, you know, what can you do with the one tool that you have? You know, that whole concept wasn't really pushed towards me. The whole lick writing concept, building your vocabulary, motifs, none of that stuff was really pushed on me until I kind of had to go through and figure out, all right, why are I not doing this? What's keeping me from it? Well, it's a little bit of vocabulary. Okay, how do I get a vocabulary? Well, let's write something. Let's learn from some other players, a combination of everything. So, yeah, there's a lot that I wish I would have had early on, but hopefully most of the stuff that I call page 1 concepts, almost all of it is what I talked about here in my videos. I try and push any of my students to, you know, absolutely, let's, you know, learn cover songs. Let's get that perspective from these other players. You know, how do they use the scale, and how do they use this chord, and blah, blah, blah. But I think if you are going to be a career musician, you absolutely have to know the hows and whys, only for your own sake, because it will just help you expand everything. You'll understand everything a lot more. It's also in an actual real world working environment. You know, for example, if I couldn't read music, if I didn't know theory, you know, being in Steve Vai's band for the last 13 years, you know, Steve hands out no tab. He hands out just notation written down. If I couldn't read that, you know, it would probably be kind of okay, but to get things done faster and more professionally and just, you know, have more time for recording and writing and all that good stuff, rather than somebody holding my hand to try and, you know, read a piece of paper, he probably would have replaced me if I didn't know how to read and do it myself. So, you know, little things like that are really crucial for the actual real world situations. That's got to be there, you know. Also communicating, you know, if I say to somebody, hey, let's write a song in C Lydian, and they don't know that, well, now I have to hold their hand and I have to, you know, kind of spell it out for them. It's just a time waster. So, you know, professionals work with people who hopefully are all on the same page. So it's not just about your own expansion, it's about communication. It's the real world, you know, work side of things as well that, you know, have taken me, you know, pretty good places. The influences that I've had for forever, you know, Tom Schultz from Boston, I always thought was just epic because he wrote awesome songs, and then he wrote awesome guitar solos, and their harmony, both on the vocal side of things and the guitar side of things, pretty much taught me how, you know, what harmony is. Awesome stuff. I liked all those classic rock guys. Dave Gilmour is one of my favorite. Pete Townsend, another favorite. Clapton, you know, these guys really helped me get started and just kind of, you know, what is a cool rock song? What does a cool rock guitar sound like? That kind of stuff. And then, you know, the 80s guys, Vai, Satriani, these kind of guys taught, Hendrix, of course, way back then. But, you know, these guys were kind of like, at the time, the contemporary Hendrix in the sense that, you know, it wasn't just here's a chunk of chords and here's a whole bunch of lead playing. They kind of put everything together. And it was definitely, you know, an 80s kind of way, but very, very cool. And they've continued to keep contemporary with it. But now there's so many good players. Guthrie Govan is probably my favorite. The guy's just an absolute monster player. Authentic in every genre, knows every technique front and back, really inspirational, really makes you want to, you know, pull your hair out, but at the same time, you know, really strive to keep getting better. So he's one of my favorites currently. Robin Ford, Scott Henderson, what else? Who else am I listening to? Oh, geez. I don't know. Those are the ones that come to mind, but I'm always on the lookout for, you know, who's out there doing something cool. So how I got started with Steve Vai, I went to MI, I went to GIT, but as soon as I got there, literally the day I got there, I understood that, you know, you could be the best player ever, but if nobody knows you, you know, nothing's going to happen. You know, that's why it's all about marketing. That's why Coke will go and put a billboard of, you know, their products everywhere so that you know what's going on, so that you know what's available and you go and buy it and blah, blah, blah. It's the same principle. You gotta have an awesome product. If you're an awesome guitar player, you are the product. But if nobody knows you, then how are you gonna get work? You know, so there was a job board up at MI. I need to start knowing people. I figured getting an internship would be a good way to do that. You know, I just happened to pick one that was very simple. It said, you know, seeking basic office assistant intern at a music management company, artist management company, make your own hours, fax your resume here. And that's, you know, make your own hours is exactly what I was looking for, because I was at GIT to, you know, to practice and play and learn and do all that kind of stuff. So I wanted to meet people, but I wanted to kind of have my own hours, you know. So I faxed my resume, had no names on it or anything, and I got a call like at 11 that night, and it turned out to be this woman named Ruta Pedals. Who I had heard the name, but I couldn't quite place it. And she started listing off her artists, and she finally ended up with, and I manage a guitar player named Steve Vai. Do you know who that is? I was like, of course, I know who that is. I've had a, you know, poster of Steve Vai up on my wall since I was 10. Interned for her, you know, again, I was the office assistant. I did everything. Go and get lunch, go get mail, you know, take Steve some papers. And I always tell the joke that, you know, it's true, but every time I would go over, he would call me a different name, which is very funny. But, you know, so Steve and I got to know each other that way. I never once pushed my guitar playing on that whole environment, because as soon as you do that, you're a fanboy. You're a little bit too eager. So, you know, they knew I was a guitar player, but I never said, "Hey, you gotta listen. You gotta let me play. You gotta listen to this." That was just the wrong way to do it, and I knew that. So, you know, eventually Steve, you know, he would always ask what's going on. And one time he asked, this was towards the end of the year at GIT, and I said, well, I'm recording a 4-song demo with some students in the recording program. He's like, cool, let me hear it. And I was like, okay. So we did the project, I handed it over to Steve, and I didn't think anything of it because this was right when he was launching his label, Favorite Nation, so he was getting inundated with demos and all that kind of stuff, so I figured he was just going on a pile and blah, blah, blah. Didn't really hear anything. And then about a month later, got a call, and Steve said, yeah, I listened to your demo, I like your playing, I'm about to go on tour, do you want to be in the band? So, of course, I said yes. And there was no audition process other than, you know, he heard that. But really what it was getting the internship, even though I was doing, you know, menial work, I just did it professionally with a smile on my face and a positive attitude and nice and all that kind of stuff. And the reputation is what really got me in the door. You know, because you can be an awesome player, but if you're a jerk, nobody's going to want to tour with you, of course. So it's all about trust. It's all about your reputation, but it's about meeting people and knowing people so that, you know, they can get to know you. And, you know, that's how people, you know, get anywhere, of course. You know, it's people helping people, which is an awesome kind of thing. So I had to leave school, which I was happy to do because I was going to start getting paid for actually playing guitar. And it's funny, to wrap it up, I remember telling my parents, and they were like, oh, okay, that's fine, because they didn't really get it. And they didn't really get it. I was like, yeah, I mean, I'm going to be getting paid for this. We're going to go on a world tour. I'm from Philly. I said, we're going to be playing in Philly. You'll have to come to the show. And when they finally came to the show and they saw thousands of people there, they finally, it clicked. And they were the proudest people and still are the proudest people ever. And, you know, so yeah, it's been a lot of fun. That's how I ended up in Steve Vai's band. So as a guitar player, I'm a gearhead, as I'm sure most of you are, so I figured it would be a great idea to talk about some of the gear that I'm using here and the gear that I use in general. I've been using Paul Reed Smith guitars now for, I don't know, geez, about 2 years. And I can't say enough good things about PRS guitars. It's a trust thing. When you meet Paul Reed Smith and you understand his methodology and his ideology and his severe passion for the smallest details in the instrument, that results in trust. I know that this wood is going to be the absolute best wood that can possibly be put into an instrument. The fretboard, the neck, everything about it, the screws on the tremolo system have been tested, and the metals, the density, all this stuff. It really goes deep that Paul gets into here. It's about that trust. So I have just absolutely fallen in love with Paul Reed Smith guitars because they play amazingly. Every single model that I have, every model that I've played, it's like, you know, it feels like home. So let me talk about what this guitar is. This guitar is my favorite one that Paul's making right now. This is called the 513. This is a custom shop model that we did some tweaking to their base model 513. First of all, it's got a 5-way switch, and then you see a little bit abnormally, it's got a 3-way switch. What that does is it gives you a single coil sound, a low output humbucker, and a high output humbucker. And this is not just splitting coils, okay, like a coil tap. That really doesn't work. These are 5 individual single coils. These are PRS's proprietary single coils. So when it is in single coil mode, you're not getting split humbuckers. They are real single coils. And then, of course, they are looped together for low output humbucker and then high output humbucker, that kind of thing. You know, typical volume and tone. PRS's proprietary tremolo system, which is the best I've ever played. It is the smoothest. There is no locking nuts or anything like that, and it doesn't go out of tune. This is a solid piece of ash for the body. I love ash. It's got a great character to it, a little bit on the bright side, but again, not in a harsh kind of way. It's got a really mellow mid-range to it, great presence, great definition in the low end. Maple neck, which adds more presence, and we were kind of talking about, it might be a little too bright, but it's really not. Beautiful flame maple neck, maple board, stainless frets, and Powa, which is, you know, a shell like abalone, but it's a little more colorful than abalone. Standard birds for our fretboard here. And then PRS's locking tuners, which make changing the strings amazing. Instead of having, like, you know, the tuners back, the lock thing back here, which always tears up your hands, it's just a simple plastic screw up here, which is really easy to to work with. It's just absolutely amazing. So the tweaks that we did to this versus a typical 513, I put 2 more frets on it. So this is a 24 fret guitar, mainly because of my own music and the work that I do with Steve Vai. Sometimes we get pretty high up there, so having guitars that are full range, 24 frets, is pretty advantageous a lot of times. It just means that I can take less guitars on tour. If I have like a 22 fret and then the song needs a 24 fret, obviously I need another guitar. So if I just do 24 frets, I can kind of cover all my bases here. And we took the bridge pickups here and we put them on a slant, just like a Strat, simply because to get more of that Strat tonal balance thing happening. That's pretty much it. And then up here, as I've had on all the videos, this is an IntelliTouch PT10 tuner. I love those things. Just nice and convenient to not have to carry around a separate tuner, a separate pedal to have in your pedal board, in your chain, degrading your tone, all that kind of stuff. So that's my guitar. Let's talk about the pedals that I'm using today. I'm using an Xotic Effects Xotic, not EXOTIC. The first pedal that I go into is an EP booster. I don't play without this. I don't care what amp I'm playing on. This pedal is always on. I don't use it as a boost, so the knob is at unity. It's all the way off. It's just that the EP booster will take your amp and it makes it blossom. It blossoms the low frequency, it blossoms the high frequencies. It just does wonders for your amp. It's one of these little magic pedals that you never turn off. And then I'm plugged into Xotic's new custom shop BB Comp, which is if you're familiar with BB, the BB preamp. Awesome preamp, overdrive type pedal. This is a new version. It's the Comp. It's got a couple of different compression settings in it. Sounds really natural. Doesn't color the sound at all. It just adds in some really great organic amp-like saturation. And the way that I use my pedals, it's always at unity. Okay, so I don't use pedals as a boost. If I step on and off of the pedals over top of my standard amp setup, you probably won't be able to hear the difference. It's really for me. So my volume is at unity, maybe just a hair above, and the overdrive is also just a hair above unity. So what I use it for is just for soloing, especially live, just get a little bit more saturation, tiny bit more volume. It just makes playing just a little bit easier. And I love these Xotic pedals. I've been using them for a few years now. Aside from Xotic, I use Maxon's pedals, which I absolutely love. The typical 808. The VOP9 is one of my favorite pedals. And then I would say my other favorite overdrive is the Keeley TS808 reissue. It's just the best, 70s tube screamer kind of sound that I have found yet. Okay, but today I'm just using the Xotic stuff here. And then strings, I use Ernie Ball strings, usually a 10 to 46 gauge. Picks, I use the Red Bear picks. I use the Big Jazzer Heavy, amazing pick. Amps, I've been using the Fryette, used to be called VHT, now it's called Fryette. I use the Fryette Ultra Lead. I've been using those for many years, about a decade now. Why? Because they use KT88 power tubes, which produces a really defined low end. And I've been playing 7-string for about 15 years. And as soon as you pick up a 7-string and you plug into a typical amp, the low end gets really loose, really muddy. I like an articulate kind of sound no matter what kind of guitar I'm playing. And the KT88s certainly help with that. So I've been using the Fryette Ultra Leads for quite a while. Recently, Paul Reed Smith's been making some new amps, and they're phenomenal. So I've been playing the PRS. It's called the 2-channel H, which is an amazing amp 2-channel. It's hand-wired here in America, in Maryland, and I think the street price is like $14.95. I'm not trying to sell you it. I'm just saying it's hand-wired, hand-built. For $14.95, it's amazing. I definitely recommend trying it out. Great amp. And then they make another amp called the 25th Anniversary, which I've been using a lot. It's basically a Plexi, but the best Plexi you've ever heard. And that's pretty much it for my gear. My first band I started when I was like 13, and we were, it was a 5-piece band. We actually had our shit together. We simply wrote original songs, and we actually recorded a record and had a record out when I was 13, full length, you know, and we went out and started playing shows. We did another one that came out, I guess, when I was 15, just turning 16. You know, it was just obviously kid stuff, but, you know, we did it front to back. That's how serious we were about it, and it was a cool way to kind of get a real head start on writing and understanding that no matter where you are as a player and you're going to write a song, you got to serve the song, and then if it's a good song, it'll do its thing.
Are those CDs still out? Can people still get those?
No.
Like, compared to
No.
the nowadays?
No. Those will never be, I will never let those things get out. No. They weren't even on CD. Those were on tape. Well, nobody will ever hear that stuff. Yeah, when I'm writing, no, I don't write like 20 songs and pick 10 of them, or 50 songs and pick 20 of them, or whatever like that. No, I understand that, and that's a great way to do it. But my records, especially my last one, was a very different approach. I literally wrote it from the first note to the last note, which I don't recommend doing because it was very difficult and time consuming. But to me, a record's got to have a really good flow to it to tell a story, especially if it's kind of has a repeating concept to it, which this one did. You know, and the concept was simply just a melodic theme that you hear established in the first song. It's in the middle of the record, and then the whole last song is kind of wrapped around this melodic theme, bringing it all to this big climactic section. But it's got to have a flow. So I wanted to understand how the last song was how the first song was gonna finish before I went into the second song, and how that song was going to finish before I went into the third song. So that ended up being 11 songs. I actually had to cut one song because it was not going to fit on one record, and I didn't want to do a dual disc thing just for one song. It didn't make financial sense to do it. So I did actually have to cut one song, but it's a long record. It's 74 minutes or something like that. And you know, when you listen to it, you do hear that it's got a really nice flow to it because of that kind of attention to detail was spent on it. Now, again, that's an extreme example, and I probably won't do it again. But it does produce, you know, really nice results. So no, it was purpose built. I didn't whittle things down from a huge selection of songs. I just you know, I always have ideas cooking. You know, whenever I come up with any kind of something that I think might turn into a song, I have a Pro Tools session on my desktop that's just called Ideas. So I throw everything in there, years and years old, you know. And every once in a while I'll go back and listen and see if it sparks something, but I don't like have full songs just like ready to go. I'm working on an acoustic record because the last two records I've done have taken a really long time, you know, tons and tons of layering and orchestration and that kind of stuff. So I figured, what can I do that's as opposite as that, from that kind of stuff? So I was like, me and an acoustic guitar, one track, no overdubs, no rhythm, nothing else. That's it. I was like, I'm gonna do that. That'll be nice and simple. I was completely fooling myself because that's a whole different genre that's extremely complex. Because if it's just you and no accompaniment, you are the rhythm player, the lead player, harmony, melody, you know, groove. It's all these things that have to be established by yourself. So kind of jumped into a really deep pool that I didn't really understand. So slowly but surely I'm understanding it and writing this record, and it's really fun. It's a lot of fun to just sit down and, you know, just think about your part and make it cool and fun and interesting. So that's in the works. I've already started this fourth record, which is going to be what I'm calling the, you know, a guitar player's guitar record. You know, just all about really cool guitar stuff, lots of cool flashy technique and all that kind of stuff. I have no idea when that'll be out. The acoustic record will be out in the first quarter of next year. The fourth one, because of touring, I have no idea, but it's underway. And then, like I said, just my Riff of the Week videos that I've done since, you know, 2005. They're still going strong, always doing that once a week. And, you know, I always do some mixing for other artists, some producing other artists, because I love doing that stuff. But, you know, that's always a revolving door of different projects going on. But I mainly focus on my stuff when I'm off tour. Band project wise, I mean, I've got 2 solo records out, so I tour with my own band, which is, you know, I started out with a 5-piece because my music has a lot of guitar parts, so I could have taken 10 guitar players on tour. Obviously, it's not financially viable, but started out as a 5-piece, and then the last tour I did last year, we cut it down to just a 3-piece because I had to realize that, you know, there's the live version of things and there's the recorded version of things, and you know, to make things again financially viable, you gotta be real about it. So we went out as a three-piece, and we had an absolute blast. I do this tour called A Night of Pure Guitar that myself and Rob Balducci, who's a New York-based guitar player, he's on Vai's label. Me and him started doing shows together with our bands, and it's a blast. It's an absolute blast. It's real grassroots, you know, we're in a 15-passenger van with a U-Haul in the back, just driving around the country, but it's such a blast. We love doing it, and aside from that, like I said, I've been playing in Steve Vai's band for a long time. Completely different story, you know, tour buses all over the world, you know, Vai tours, G3 tours, all that kind of stuff. And in 2012, we got a G3 tour coming up with Joe Satriani and Steve Lukather, and then a world Steve Vai tour again, which it's a pretty extensive tour because we haven't been out on tour for quite a while. Getting out and hitting all the usual stomping grounds, US, Europe, South America, Asia, Australia. Should be a lot of fun.